First of all, I'm stealing this from Max Kellerman, but it helps clear up a lot of scoring or controversy of the scoring, at least internally. The thing that the controversies are built on are indecisive rounds. I'm going to talk about a 12-round championship fight. There are generally decisive rounds and indecisive rounds. Decisive rounds is when you know, okay, look, that guy clearly won the round. Indecisive round is, I'm not sure. I gave it to that guy, but the other guy could have got it. Keep in mind that most athletic commissions discourage even rounds. They force the judges to choose one or the other. Generally speaking, the only time you get an even round is if fighter A wins the round over fighter B, but fighter A receives a point deduction for a low blow or something like that, in which case you have a score that is 10 minus 1 versus 9, which effectively is 9-9. But outside of a point deduction, you generally do not get even rounds in boxing. So you have to take that as a general rule. This was actually something that was discussed in Ring Magazine about 25 years ago. I don't know if it was Jerry Roth or Chuck Jam, but one of the judges specifically mentioned this. So generally, when I score a boxing match, in the margin of every round that I score, I will write in whether or not I believe it is a decisive or indecisive round. I'm going to give an example of a fight that I'm pretty familiar with. Oscar De La Hoya versus Ike Quartey. That is a fight that either one of them could have won. In that 12-round fight, I thought that Oscar only won 3 decisive rounds. That's it, just 3. Conversely, I thought that Ike Quartey won 4 decisive rounds. So among the 12 rounds, 7 of them were decisive one way or the other, and the other 5 were indecisive rounds. That could have gone to either fighter. The point of all this is to determine whether or not a decision is a bad decision or merely a controversial decision. Because there are some decisions in boxing that are just not justifiable, where one guy is just beating the living crap out of the other fighter for the entire fight, and yet he somehow doesn't get the decision. This is something that allows you to mentally feel like, you might not agree with the decision, but you can kind of sort of see why it went that way. Basically, once you're scoring a fight, you're going to end up with 3 different scores. You'll have a range where fighter A gets all of his decisive rounds plus all the indecisive rounds, and at the other extreme, fighter B gets all of his decisive rounds plus all the indecisive rounds. And then the other score is your personal score. So in that fight, I think it'd be a lot more charged if I talk about Leonard Hagler. That's what I really should talk about, but I don't have that fight well memorized. So first round, decisive round. I get it to Oscar. He was throwing combinations. Quartey really wasn't doing much at all. He was backing Quartey up. Quartey was blocking. Second round, that was the decisive round for Quartey. He was jabbing the hell out of Oscar and punching him periodically, but it was clear he was dominating him. Third round, indecisive round. I give it to Oscar. It was really, really close, hard to tell, but what flavored him were all the flurries that he was throwing. Quartey really wasn't doing much, but it was indecisive. Fourth round, indecisive round. I also give it to Oscar. He was just throwing so many flurries and backing up Quartey again. But you could argue that Quartey was winning it because he was just jabbing the hell out of Oscar periodically and throwing some right hands. So now we're a third through the fight. We have 1 decisive round for Oscar, 1 decisive round for Quartey, and 2 even, or rather 2 indecisive. So the possible range of scores that you could have at this point of the fight, after the 4th round, is 3-1 for Oscar or 3-1 for Quartey. Obviously, it could be 2-2, 3-1, but that's the range. It can't be 4-0 Oscar. It can't be 4-0 Quartey, because each one of them won at least 1 decisive round, you know for sure, and 2 of them were indecisive. You can see how this fight was all over the place. 5th round, decisive round. I gave this one to Quartey. Oscar was getting a bit tired. He was throwing combinations, but he was being very ineffective, and Quartey was jabbing and throwing him right hands. 6th round, decisive round. 100% the 6th round was for Ike Quartey. They both dropped each other in the round. Oscar within the first 10 seconds, and then Quartey about 15 or so seconds after that. But then for the remainder of the round, Quartey was basically punching Oscar in the face, and Oscar was tired as hell. So now we're halfway through the fight. At this point, after 6 rounds, Oscar has only won 1 decisive round. Quartey has won 3 decisive rounds. And so far, 2 have been indecisive. So the possible range of scores that you could give at this point where it would be fair would be 5 rounds to 1 in favor of Quartey. 5 rounds to 1 in favor of Quartey, or 3 rounds to 3. Because at this point, like I just said, Quartey has won 3 100% decisive rounds that you cannot take away from him. So at this point, the only range that you could have is 5-1 Quartey or 3-3. Now, 7th round, indecisive round. I gave it to Quartey. Quartey was being a little bit effective. Oscar was throwing his combinations, but he was tired as hell. Both of them were kind of slapping with their punches, nothing really solid. It was a bit muddled, hard to tell. I thought Quartey, won by about a hair. I gave it to Quartey. 8th round, indecisive round. I also gave this one to Quartey, but it was really hard to tell. Quartey was jabbing the hell out of Oscar through most of the round, but also Oscar smacked Quartey with a pretty solid right hand. I gave this round mostly to Quartey because of consistency. But in this specific round, I think Oscar's power shots were a lot more crisp. But I still give it to Quartey. I thought Quartey did enough in this round. I gave him a lot of credit for volume, and let's face it, Corte hits hard. So now we are 2/3 through the fight. We're past the 8th round. So far, Oscar has only won 1 decisive round. Corte has won 3 decisive rounds, rounds 2, 5, and 6 decisively. And the remaining rounds, 3, 4, 7, and 8, were indecisive. They could have gone to Oscar. They could have gone to Corte. So at this point, the possible range of scores is 7-1 for Corte or 5-3 Oscar. So remember, if you give all the indecisive rounds to Corte plus his decisive rounds, it's 7-1 for Corte. If you give all the indecisive rounds to Oscar plus his 1 decisive round, it's 5-3 for Oscar. 9th round, decisive round for Corte. I'm surprised he didn't drop Oscar in this round. This round, more than all of them, I think, aside from the 6, is when Corte really kicked the crap out of Oscar. Oscar looked like he was dying in there. It was definitely a super decisive round for Corte. 10th round, here's a shocker, decisive round for Oscar. For some reason, Corte didn't continue with his rally and Oscar took over and he won this round super clearly. This one you had to score for Oscar. So now, through 10 rounds, we have 2 decisive rounds for Oscar. Rounds 1 and 10. There are 4 decisive rounds for Corte. 2, 5, 6, and 9. And still 4 indecisive rounds. Rounds 3, 4, 7, and 8. So now the possible range of legitimate scores after 10 rounds, 8 rounds to 2 for Corte to 6 rounds to 4 for Oscar. Now, 11th round. Indecisive round. I gave it to Oscar. Corte just didn't throw punches in this round. He was sort of just parrying. Oscar was throwing punches, but Corte was blocking them. This was a round that I just gave to Oscar because of activity. Corte just didn't do a damn thing. I think you could argue with the 11th round that maybe Corte won it on defense, but Oscar threw all the punches in the 11th round. But it was not really a high-activity round. I think they were just preparing for the hell that was going to happen in the next round, the 12th. But this was an indecisive round, round 11. This one is just a weird one to score. But I felt Oscar deserved it. Finally, round 12. 100% decisive round for Oscar. If you've seen the fight, I don't even have to explain. Oscar knocks him down and then proceeds to beat the crap out of Ike Corte on the ropes. That was a clear, decisive 10-8 round for Oscar. It's the only true 10-8 round in the fight. So, after 12 rounds, I had 3 decisive rounds for Oscar. 3 that you cannot dispute. Rounds 1, 10, and 12. Those were 100% Oscar rounds. Conversely, I had 4 decisive rounds for Corte. Rounds 2, 5, 6, and 9. And the remaining rounds, rounds 3, 4, 7, 8, and 11, were indecisive rounds, where either fighter could have gotten them. So at the end of 12 rounds, the possible range of scores for this fight would have been 9 rounds to 3 for Corte to 8 rounds to 4 for Oscar. If Corte would have won the fight 9 rounds to 3, the score would have been 116 to 111 because you have to deduct an extra point for the knockdown that Corte suffered. On the Oscar side, he could have won the fight 8 rounds to 4, which would have been 116, 111. I mean, that fight could have swung either way, 116, 111. Now, regarding the remaining 5 indecisive rounds, if you give 3 out of the 5 of those indecisive rounds to Oscar, he wins the fight 114, 113. If you give 3 out of those 5 indecisive rounds to Corte, he also wins the fight 114, 113. I mean, this fight was razor thin. Now, my personal score, I ended up giving Oscar 6 rounds, and I ended up giving Corte 6 rounds. I gave 3 of the indecisive rounds to Oscar, and I gave 2 of the indecisive rounds for Corte. So, 6 rounds to 6, my scorecard would have been a draw, but for the extra knockdown in the 12th round. So I have to deduct 1 point from Ike Corte. So at the end, I got 114, 113, a razor-thin split decision for Oscar, which is basically what he got, a split decision. I thought it was a fair result. It could have been a draw. Corte could have won the fight one way. Oscar could have won the fight the other way. This is a fight that really should have had a rematch because a draw would have been like a fair result. But it's not a bad decision.